Right. I'd like to call the recommendation that the regular council meeting be suspended and the committee of the whole meeting be convened. Moved by Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Aye.
All right. So, for those of you present this evening, and for those of you watching via, there's some traffic altercations out there. Watching television, please let me explain that a committee of the whole meeting is a committee that consists of all members of council. This meeting allows council members to deal with issues greater in detail but less formal than a regular council meeting. During this meeting, issues are not formally adopted, but recommendations may be made at the next regular council meeting. At the time, the recommendations of the previous committee of the whole meeting will be adopted and acted upon. Some key points to remember when making your presentation are: remember that council meetings are televised, and it's very important to introduce yourself and, if applicable, the name of the organization that you are representing, and speak directly into the microphone with a clear voice. When presenting, please address any comments or questions to the chair of the meeting. Keep your presentation brief. 5 minutes would be ideal, in accordance with the council procedure bylaw. That was in pen, sorry. Once you have completed your presentation, please ensure you summarize any requests or concerns. The chair will then ask council members if they have any questions. Remember, there will be no decisions made at this meeting or on any requests or concerns you have made. Lastly, requests will be referred to staff for review, report, and recommendation to council. Perfect. Okay, I'd like to call this committee of the whole meeting to order. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Okay, and we'll go to the adoption of the agenda, so that the agenda for the special committee of the whole meeting of April 25th, 2022 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Aye.
Okay, on to petitions and delegations. So we'll have a report from Corinne Bombin, Chief Financial Officer and Deputy City Manager, regarding the 2022 budget direction.
Thank you. On March 14th, staff presented the 2022 proposed city budget and requested council to postpone direction to staff until after public feedback was obtained and final BC assessment numbers were received. Staff prepared budget documents for council outlining the cost to maintain service at existing levels, address health and safety, and capital projects to be undertaken during the fiscal year. The budget included a recommendation to increase the mill rate by 3.63% to balance the budget. All documents, including a budget simulator, were made available for the public to read and interact with. The budget simulation was open for 4 weeks, and the compilation of results is included in the report in front of you today. There were no significant changes to the BC assessment final numbers, meaning staff have not recommended any changes to the mill rate already proposed. There has been one item added to the budget since March 14th, and that is to the new landfill cell. The change is in respect of weather delays and design changes necessary to complete the cell. This additional cost is $850,000. Staff proposed funding this change with the Northern Capital and Planning Grant Reserve, which can be used for capital projects. The use of this reserve means no current year cost impact to users. With the information provided from the public and the information provided by staff to maintain existing service levels, council is asked to refer its direction on the proposed budget to the regular meeting of council today, so staff may prepare the 5-year financial plan bylaw and related tax rate bylaw, which must be adopted by May 13th of this year. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Corinne. So, a recommendation that council receives the information in this report and use it along with the budget information presented previously to formalize budget direction, and recommend that the direction to the regular council meeting of April 25th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion's
Aye.
carried. And then any questions from the members of the public? So just call to anyone to come to the floor.
Is this regarding that grant or for
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, regarding the budget? Oh, yeah, this would be for the committee of the whole. Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah, welcome if you. Yep. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's my first time as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for real, I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chris Gamble. I purchased a lot last year trying to build a house. Beginning of this year, I found out that in the permitting process, modular homes were forgotten to be added in. And I've been trying to find out when are they going to be added in? Because for me, as someone trying to build a house, I've never done it before, and it's the easiest way to do it. It's very simple. They just bring it in, crane it on a foundation. I don't need a lot of contractors. So I've just been trying to find out when is this going to be rectified.
Yeah, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two answers to that. Formally, there's a bylaw report and bylaw on Council's agenda following this meeting for an omnibus bylaw that includes, among other things, a change to remove that restriction from the bylaw. More informally, and this, I think that we can do this. The way the bylaw, the issue is in the definition of single-family dwelling, and the definition that was included in the bylaw does not allow modular homes. Now, there's no legal basis for doing that. So what I could say is you could actually make an application right now, because that's a part of the bylaw that we can't enforce. So if it's a modular home, we can process an application for a modular home now, because there is no legal basis to actually prohibit it. What we're doing with the bylaw is just doing housekeeping to take that out.
Okay, thank
So
you.
if there's any questions following, down when you put in your application, the planners can provide that information to the building inspectors.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, perfect. Welcome. Welcome back, I should say. It's been some time.
It has, and I thought I'd just better show up, just in case no one did. Larry Golden, 1601 2nd Avenue West. I see cars parking on 3rd Avenue in front of houses and stuff like that. So I looked for the bylaw that covered that online. I don't see it at all. So I was wondering if we couldn't have the bylaw and say, I assume that just even where I live, that a person can park 2 days in front of their house or something like that. But you'd rather see it in writing just to know. So if you could get somehow, and I didn't see any bylaws written out. So was I just not following the right format, or are the bylaws online?
Madam Corporate Administrator.
I can confirm that the bylaws are online. If that one in particular is missing, we did have a merging or a renewal of our website. It may have been, the link may have been broken, so I'll confirm tomorrow and ensure that that's up.
Okay, thank you. Do I need to push the button?
Oh, no, that's... Welcome.
I've just come to ask a question. What does the city plan on doing regarding our infrastructure, weeds, curbs, sidewalks, and rock walls for the next year and forever?
And forever, okay. Mr. City Manager?
I can't speak to forever.
Well, a little bit long term.
And with respect to immediate capital and maintenance plans on city infrastructure, I would defer that to Director Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We do have monies in our budget. We are looking at doing some wall investigations for retaining walls this year. However, as everyone knows there are many walls in the community, some in different states. So we are working on getting a tally of those together and finding out their priority sequence. Also, we are completing a fairly extensive asset I guess condition assessment, you would call it, so that we could prioritize our investment into our assets, which would include roads, sidewalks, curbs, gutters, drainage, etc.
Okay, so what about, has it ever been proposed that the homeowner clean to the curb and get some kind of a tax deduction?
Not in my time here at the City of Prince Rupert, but that can be something that a program that can be considered through council.
Okay, I've walked on sidewalks where I've had to phone the city and say I have to walk on the road because it's so overgrown, and they would come and clean it. All they do is weed eat it. It grows back a month later. What I guess I'm trying to get at, is there anything that we can do so it doesn't do that? It doesn't wreck our curbs, our sidewalks, and we're paying money to fix our infrastructure. Like, I'm talking about side streets. I'm not talking about 2nd Avenue and 3rd Avenue.
If I may, Mr. Chair, this is a difficult challenge when there's limited resources that council has through taxation to do work. And council is always, cognizant of the problem in raising taxes to increase service. So what is being referred to as an increase of service in order to expand maintenance along the roadways and the boulevards. One thing that some municipalities do is they pass a bylaw that, and I think that we might have a similar one here, that puts the onus and responsibility of property owners to look after their own boulevards. That if there's grass, that means cutting the grass and so forth. So that's one approach that municipalities do in order to keep the burden of taxes down, is to put the onus on the property owner. We can confirm whether or not that's in our bylaw, but I think it is.
Okay, I know resources are limited, but when you see 4 workers on 3rd Avenue working, and the street is pretty clean, where our side streets are overgrown, looking terrible, it would be great if they could disperse the workers, maybe to go work on side streets. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that to the attention. People are leaving Prince Rupert, longtime residents, and they're just saying it's really sad to see where we're going. And I love Prince Rupert, so I would like to see it get better.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Nice to see everybody that I know. Haven't seen people in a long time. My name is Jennifer Nelson, born and raised Prince Rupertite, member of the Tsimshian Nation, whose territory we are all on. I have been, and this is going to be a little bit long, I apologize. I sent an email to try and brief you guys ahead of time on Thursday, but I guess I attached too many pictures to it, so it didn't send, I guess, and it didn't bounce back. So I rewrote it this morning, and I cut it up into 3 individual emails. The first one with my email actually didn't send, and I don't know if you received my pictures, but I did attach pictures, and I sent it to the City Hall email address. Did you get it? Oh, thanks, Reed. Awesome. So my issue today is I've been noticing a lot of increased air pollution in and around our city. I am a First Nations natural harvester, so I am always out in nature and I'm always harvesting seasonally. There's a few things that have really come to light lately. In the past year, I've really tried to make a point of taking pictures of when I notice the air pollution that I'm about to talk about, and it comes in the way of the chemical pollutants that are left behind from all the air traffic in our area.
I don't know why there is this increase of air traffic in our area, and I'm not talking about float planes. I'm talking about the commercial flights that are supposed to be way up there because every city has a protected airspace. I know that from running float planes for a number of years through my old career as a fishing resort owner. Our airspace is supposed to be protected. Humans need 3 basic essentials to have good health and to maintain optimal health. It's clean water, which we really haven't seen around here in a couple of years, and you cannot deny that. I'm still toting my water because I still don't trust the city water system. No offense to anybody here, it's just a personal choice. You also need good food. That sometimes comes with personal choice, and people don't always make the best choices, but in the north here, I know it's very difficult to get anything of good quality that's organic. Very helpful for the new store that we have called Mission Health. It helps a great deal, but it doesn't help with the fresh vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. So I do a lot of foraging for natural foods to try and make up for that. And the third is clean air. We need good food, good water, and good air to breathe to maintain an optimal health. And with all the health issues that have been on the rise since the turn of the clock in 2020, we all know what I'm talking about, now is more critical than ever for everybody to be able to have those good quality basic necessities to be able to try and maintain our health as we get through this, whatever it is. I have reported this incident twice. Back in August last year, it was brought to light to me when we were out foraging in February of last year. Just all the planes flying over every day, especially, we notice it when it's sunny here. I don't know if they're there when it's cloudy, we can't see, and I don't know if they're there at night because I can't see then too. I'm not Batman, I'm just a 58-year-old Rupertite. And I'm sorry, I'm talking fast because I know I have 5 minutes and I have a lot to say. It was all in my emails. But, so it was brought to light and I just kind of ignored it last February, you know, just took it into consideration. And then I started noticing, geez, there is an increase of this traffic, this air traffic. I've lived here for 58 years and I don't recall seeing so many planes just constantly circling over our city. They're not going anywhere. They're not coming from someplace and going to someplace. They're hovering here. And the amount of chemicals in the trails that they're leaving behind is substantial. This is going to be the second year that I cannot harvest sorrel berries. Last year I did do a harvest. I soaked them, you know, normally we have to soak them overnight. I soaked them for 4 days trying to get them to taste like laughing berries again. Laughing berries, sorry. We call them laughing berries. Zawas is sorrel berries is what I'm talking about. But anyhow, I had to throw my whole harvest out because I couldn't get the chemical kind of gasoline-y kind of taste out of them. And I've never experienced that before. And I miss having laughing berries. It's critical for your immune system, and it has all kinds of antioxidants for cleaning out heavy metals and all kinds of things, all kinds of great benefits. It's a food and a medicine. But so anyhow, in August of last year, my nephew went missing and we were on restrictions and we weren't allowed to gather. We needed to figure out how we were going to search for him. So my family came over and we sat in my yard for about 5 hours. It was a beautiful sunny day, and it was my aunties that pointed out, you know, look at what is all this? Look at all the chemtrails. And those are some of the pictures that I sent to you. They're pictures just of the sky right above my house. And it's not like there's 1 or 2. There's 4 or 5 of these trails right side by side, or sometimes even in a grid pattern. It's very, very deliberate. I also sent pictures of, you know, fishing out on the harbor with my uncle just in February of this year. And I deliberately took a picture. I was taking a picture of the sunset and a beautiful rod in the picture. And I noticed in the background there were 2 planes right on the horizon, upwind from us. They're always upwind, and they were crossing towards each other, and each laying down
whatever it is they're laying down. And so when I reported it to the RCMP in August of 2021, they didn't even want to take my complaint. I said, look, I am calling about to report suspicious activity, and it's an actual crime, and you literally have to investigate this because I'm calling you. You're a public servant. You need to look into this. My questions was, what are all these planes flying over Rupert now? Who owns them, and what chemical pollutants are they dropping on us? We have children playing in the streets, Wade, on our block every day. When it's sunny especially, our streets are full, and it's a lovely thing to see. I am a pet owner. I walk my dog on sunny days, my grand pug, on sunny days, and I hate taking my dog out of the house when it's sunny because they're always up there now. And now it's impossible for me to notice when they're here. I have several pictures, and they're very, very obvious. Just the other morning, I got up, and it was a beautiful day, and I noticed there was a beautiful sundog around our sun. And I thought, oh, look at that, sundog. Means that it's going to be a cool night. Don't put your plants out yet. You know, we're going to have a frost, according to our culture. And then I was talking to my daughter, who lives down in Vancouver, and I said, how's your weather there? And she said, it's beautiful, Mom. And so I took a picture of our sun, and I said, it's beautiful here. I said, but there's a sundog. I said, I'm just wondering if it's natural or not. And I said, can you take a picture of the sun for me where you are? Because her day was bright and clear too. We're all looking at the same sun on this planet, and if it was a true sundog, then everybody on this planet that was looking at the sun would have seen it. She sent me her picture, and it was clear as day. No sundog, no ring around the sun, no ring around their moon at night. You know, we're getting something put down on us, and this is not right. My questions to the RCMP and to all of you is to please take note of this. It's the air we breathe. I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing this because I care about this world right now. I care about the animals. I absolutely care about continuing to harvest food and medicines from our forests because that's our right and it's out there free for the taking. I put in the time for it and I absolutely appreciate it. And then it was brought to my attention on April the 1st that Sonia Furstenau, the leader of the Green Party, put out a TikTok and an Instagram film, and it's funny that it was on April 1st because I thought, is this an April Fool's joke? Because she actually divulged that there is a bioengineering forestry project going on by the province in the southern part of our province that is targeting and this was all in my email as well. I'm sorry to ramble on. The Stolostatnik Nation, the Nakpakmu Nation, Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. So I got on the phone to my daughter again. She is archaeologist with a master's degree, and she is the resident archaeologist for the Tsleil-Waututh Nation down in Vancouver. They do a lot of fantastic work on reforestation, bringing back the herring in Burrard Inlet, all kinds of stuff. They're a very active native band. So I asked her, I said, is your band aware of this announcement that Sonia just made? And she said, yeah, it's ridiculous. And I said, so it's a real thing? She said, yeah, we've been fighting it, and we just get shut down or lip service from both the provincial and federal government. And what they're doing is they're putting down glyphosates, aluminum, and other chemicals to literally kill the underbrush, which is medicine to us, and berry bushes in all of these nations, and all of these traditional territories and nations are being deliberately targeted. So once again, us Indians are under attack, and it doesn't feel good. I don't think it's ever going to stop in our lifetime, but I'm always going to talk about it. And so I got on the phone Thursday and Friday after confirming with my daughter that this is in fact true. And I started just with the ombudsman, Jennifer Rice's office. I spent all day Thursday and all day Friday on the phone like literally all day. And I just got transferred from department to department to department to department. Didn't matter if it was provincial, didn't matter if it was federal. 3 times I ended back up with this lovely receptionist named Dale, and 3 times I ended up with the same receptionist, Jody. I just got sent around on a phone tree until I ended up back with these women, and they were just as annoyed as I was. So they left a handwritten message. I asked, can we do this old school, and can you please just give somebody in your building a handwritten message to phone me, because I would just like to find out now if this same ridiculous genocidal, ecocidal forestry project is also happening up here in our territory. I've had 0 success in having any of my questions answered with the RCMP or with any faction. I mean, literally from the Blue Pages, I called reporting environmental violations and dangerous wildlife. I talked with Operator 15. She took my complaint and phone number and then transferred me on to another department saying, this isn't my department. I said, but it's in your title. So then I called the Airport Coastal Watch out of the Blue Pages. You would think it's air traffic. We're on the coast. Sounds right to me. Sounds like a good department. And they said, no, 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 ma'am. We only deal with human trafficking. And I thought, you've got to be joking me. And he said, so unless you have a human trafficking complaint, and of course, in frustration, I said, well, if you mean other than you and I that have been human trafficked since birth, through the birth certificate system, and if you don't believe me, look at your own long-form birth certificate system. In the very bottom fine print of the left corner, you'll see right on it, it says, this is a Canadian banknote. And you know, I just left it at that with him. But my whole point is that there's all these organizations that say that they are concerned about the environment. I've spent a year on this, and then 2 days just recently again on the phone, because I went to the RCMP again on Thursday, and they said, we want you to do some homework too. I said, oh, I've done lots, and yep, I'll get on the phone again today, and I'll get on the phone again tomorrow. I couldn't even find one place to lodge the complaint. So I'm asking for the city's awareness. This is our home. These streets, our air, our water, they are crucial. And why do you think people are leaving here in a mass exodus? Pretty soon nobody's going to have a job here. There's going to be no taxpayers, you know, and there's some of us that really still care about where we live. I'm never leaving here. This is my traditional territory. I come from a high house, a royal house on both sides of my family, my grandfather and my grandmother's side. We have an obligation to be here and as stewards of the land to take care of our whole territory. This territory is not coined by just Metlakatla or Lac Willam's. Rupert especially, I don't know if you know the history, but it was a gathering site for all of the Tsimshian Nation. We all have territory here, and it's all of our responsibility. And I say, even as a taxpayer of this city, that it's your responsibility too to start noticing these things. We've got trees and shrubs and things coming out right now in fresh bloom because it's spring. You don't have to be a botanist to notice the shoots are coming out and they're dying. They're wilting. What's happening? You know, and why am I the only one noticing this? On Easter Sunday or the 16th, I don't know if you got the picture of the window of my patio door. We all have a screen that slides on our patio door, so my screen was open, and that day, the way the wind swirls around my deck in my backyard, everything got trapped in the screen and couldn't blow out again. I couldn't even see through my window. I sent a picture of the windshield of my car, and there's this white, light, powdery dust on my car. I'm sorry if I'm boring you. But it was so thick, it left streaks. I sent the picture, it left streaks like it was running down like rain. Like there is something seriously being put down on us here. And I would really like some help and some acknowledgement, you know, from other people in the city to try and figure out those 3 questions alone. Who owns these planes? What is all this increased traffic in our area? In August, when we were sitting in my yard, our airport was closed. It was literally closed, and yet I took pictures of all these chemtrails over top of my home, you know, and it's a crazy thing. It's not a conspiracy, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, because everyone loves to dismiss real problems like this with that kind of an argument. I've got pictures. I've taken pictures over the last year just of home here. I can't harvest. It's affecting us. And if people aren't noticing, I don't understand. But I've done my due diligence. I've made the RCMP take 2 of my reports, and I'll continue to do so. And I keep phoning people only to get hung up on or transferred. That's not my department. Sorry, they're on 2 weeks vacation. It's just become ludicrous trying to even launch a legitimate complaint. I don't know if everybody got the sore throat and the raw sinuses. I believe it was from, let me see, patio door, April 16th, the day that my patio door got just coated with this stuff. I have a concussion that I've had for 6 years now, and it still puts me in bed for days on end. I had just been in my quiet room for 6 days straight, and the sun came out, and I, with dark glasses on, could actually handle the daylight, so I sat out on my deck that day that my door ended up like that. And by nighttime, I had a bit of a tickle in my throat, which quickly turned into these little spikes so that you couldn't even swallow. And then by the next morning, my sinuses were so burnt and raw, I couldn't figure out what it was. I hadn't seen one person in 6 days, and I ended up with what seemed like a cold. There were no other symptoms. There was no headache, no achiness, no tiredness, no fever. Everything that your body tells you that it's doing to fight an infection was absent. All I had was the sore throat and the raw sinuses. And I don't know how many other people in this town ended up getting it, but you know, I'm just absolutely certain that we have got something very toxic in the air around here, and it's looking very deliberate with the amount of airplanes that I'm noticing that are, like I said, flying absolutely nowhere. So I've said my piece. I know you'll come up with some excuse for something, but it's on record so that now I can go back to the RCMP and tell them when they don't want to take my next call that yes, I did try and get a hold of Jen Rice. Yes, I did sit before our mayor and council. I hope you're there, Lee, and I'm sorry to see you go. And I'm trying. I'm really trying. I care about my hometown. I care about my home territory, and I more care about the kids that are growing up in this community, they've got poor water. We've had poor water for the last 2 years, and now we have poor air. We've got food shortages going on, and they're poisoning the forest where we can actually get good, healthy, natural food, you know, that can help us, and medicines on top of that. I'm still making tinctures that I can make with alcohol, but you can't use all medicines with alcohol. Some of them are too delicate, and you can only tincture them and remedy them or concoct them with water. And I won't do it because I know there's just too much chemical on these plants that are growing all around us. So thank you for your time. Sorry that I rambled on, but there you go.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'd like to call for any other members of the public. Anyone else bring concerns forward? We'll call a second time. Then we'll call a third and final time. Guess any other reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council? I'd like to entertain a motion to reconvene the regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Motion is carried. I'd like to call this meeting, so the regular council meeting, we'll call the regular council meeting to order. So we'll go with the adoption of the agenda. So the agenda for the regular council meeting of April 25th, 2022 be adopted as presented, with the addition of item 4F, Moosehide Campaign Day. Moved by Councillor Randawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Motion's carried. On to the minutes. Minutes recommendation that the special council meeting of April 11th, 2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item 3B, that the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 11th, 2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item 3C, that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of April 11th, 2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Randawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Motion's carried. All right, on to reports and resolutions. Item 4A, report from planning regarding a temporary use permit 2022-02 for 511 Cotton Street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
An application was received for a temporary use permit in relation to PID 014565749. The application involves a request to place a storage container with a length of 6.096 or 12.192 meters on the subject property for up to 1 year. The request to place a storage container on the subject property for up to 1 year is made to accommodate most of the contents of the applicant's house, located at 945 Hayes Cove Avenue, as they will be completing substantial renovations to the second floor and roof structure of their house over a period of 6 months. There are no known negative impacts of the proposed variance on the surrounding neighborhood. However, the public will have the opportunity to provide input during the public consultation period. To ensure compliance, the draft temporary use permit includes a condition that the city receives and retains a $5,000 cash bond until the temporary use is discontinued. And the recommendation is that council proceeds with the statutory notification process for temporary use permit application 2202.
Moved by Councillor Moreau, seconded by Councillor Randawa. Any discussion? Councillor Cunningham.
This lot is heavily covered in brush, mostly salmon berries and things like that. What's the proponent proposed to do with this? Are they going to clear the lot first and then put the container down, or just plunk it down there and have all that brush around it? I'd be interested in that. I'd like to see it at least chopped down or look half decent before they did something with it.
Sorry, Councillor Niche.
If I got it right, I think what it is the property that they're fixing is actually on Hayes Cove Avenue, and they're borrowing essentially property from a friend or a coworker. No, there's someone else owns it. Yeah, if you look at the application, it tells you the owner. So I think they're just helping their friend out to give them a place to store their stuff while they rip the second floor off their house. So, I mean, it is kind of an odd request because it is quite substantially far away from it. But you know, I mean, it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing to try and help someone out, but we'll let the neighborhoods, you know, have their moment to say something about it, I guess. And I'm assuming it's the neighborhood that the container is going in, and obviously not the neighborhood that the guy's doing the renovation.
Any further discussion from members of council? Okay, like to call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. All right, item 4B, another report from planning for development variance permit number 22-05 for 1107 11th Avenue East.
Mr. Chair, there is no report. It is a decision of council at this point as to whether or not to proceed.
Perfect. And the recommendation that council proceed that considering approval for development merits DVP number 222-05. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. Any discussion? All those in, oh, sorry, Councillor Cunningham.
We made a friendly amendment to this last council meeting, and the setback's still at 4 feet instead of 3 feet, I noticed. And Richard was gonna talk to the owner of the property if that was acceptable to him, but then Richard got sick and hasn't been able to get there. I just wondered if planning or anyone's gotten talked to him about that friendly amendment.
Yes, so the application was amended, and so the new draft development permit has a 0.3048 meter setback in relation to the proposed deck, with the 1.2192 meter setback from the rear property line in relation to the proposed deck's footings.
Yeah, 'cause right now we got a 4-foot setback on this diagram here.
You might have a previous report.
With
That would be the
actual footings another 2 feet back, and I talked to the owner of the property, and we talked about cantilevering the deck out, and Richard at that time was fine with that, so I went and talked to the owner today about it, and he hadn't received any official notice or anything about the changing the setback or that.
So
Yeah,
I
Mr.
think-
City Manager.
I think the information that's in here is the original application, and we understand the permit to have been changed pursuant to the direction from the friendly amendment last meeting. So the permit itself would contain those amended provisions.
Okay, but those amended provisions aren't in this, what we're passing today.
Is it not in there?
Councillor Niche.
I think they're in the agreement. I believe if you read the agreement, it's in there. It's just that the pictures and stuff are older, so you're looking at the old pictures. But if you read the agreement with them, then the new numbers are in there, I believe.
Thank you, Councillor Niche.
Yeah, I read it now. Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
I
Thank
was just looking at the pictures.
Yeah. I kept my crayons over here. Yeah. So I'd like to call the question, or any further discussion from members of council. Okay. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Item number 4C, report from Planet Development Variance number 22-09 for 1130 11th Avenue East. So recommendation that council proceed with considering approval for development variance DVP number 22-09. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Aye.
Item 4D, report from the Director of Operations and Intergovernmental Relations regarding the waterfront project update. Director Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that council receive the following project update and pass a resolution for the project award under the MSA. Over the past month, staff have made significant progress on this project with our project partners, the Kitkatla First Nation, the province of British Columbia, and CN. This project was publicly announced during the 2030 Redesign Rupert Vision campaign and has been a priority project for staff ever since. Staff is confident that we are now ready and in the position to proceed with construction of this long-awaited project. This project will see the city constructing a new ferry berth for our city's airport ferry. Additionally, the Kitkatla Nation will construct a new breakwater asset to house their new ferry, ecotourism opportunities, and economic commercial opportunities. This project also intends to incorporate some small enhancements to the existing Rotary Waterfront Park. Staff notes that this report is supported through Council's strategic plan for project development and has no impact on the annual budget, as this project is fully supported by grant funds. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Pucci. So recommendation that council receives the project update and passes a resolution for the project award under the MSA. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. The actual resolution should be that council award the contract to CTNC. So the recommendation to pass a resolution, the resolution would be that council award.
Perfect. We will correct the terminology on that. Yeah, I have receives on my agenda. My apologies. Yeah. Still stands? Okay. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Aye.
Okay, item number 4E, resolutions from the committee of the whole meeting. Madam Corporate Administrator, do we have any motions?
Yes, we do. Thank
Perfect.
you, Mr. Chair. So at this evening's committee of the whole meeting, it was moved by Councillor Cunningham and seconded by Councillor Niche that council receive the information in the report provided by the Chief Financial Officer and Deputy City Manager Corinne Bauman and use it along with the budget information presented previously to formalize budget direction and recommend that direction to the regular council meeting of April 25th, 2022.
Perfect. Do we have a recommendation on the floor for that, or motion? As received?
Well, that would be up to you what your recommendation is for the budget.
Moved by Councillor Cunningham. Sorry, recommendation? Yeah. So, recommendation that we receive the budget as presented. Moved by Councillor Cunningham. Sorry, go for it. Yeah, go second. Okay, second it. Seconded by Councillor Moreau. Any discussion? You have a question? Perfect.
So I'm just clarifying. You're moving the budget as it's been presented. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm happy to second that. Just a follow-up question regarding the additional cost of the landfill cell, estimated at $850,000 to be paid for through the Northern Capital Grant. Once that is complete, I'm sorry if you don't have this number offhand, and any of the staff. Just what would be remaining of that Northern Capital Grant that's left unallocated, not unspent, but unallocated?
If I can defer this through the chair to our treasurer, Director of
Chief Financial Officer.
Yes, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Councillor. Actually, I do know that number. The balance would be $1.16 million left.
Councillor Cunningham.
Corinne, what is the projected income for the marina, and is that based on the last couple of years with the pandemic and that, or do you have projections that that might increase to pre-pandemic or not?
Thank you, Councillor. The projected income from the marina is about $9,000, and it is not based entirely on what the last couple of years have been. However, the last few years, the marina actually has done pretty good. It pivoted out of itinerary traffic and moved rather into temporary, I believe it was charter moorage. But now that the restrictions are off to international travel, the marina is back to itinerant traffic, which is what the grant funds were received for, and therefore that's what the marina has to be utilized for. And we understand from the marina manager that all signs are that the marina will be completely subscribed for the entire summer. So it is not a drain on the city operations at all, and is rather a contributor to the organization as well as the economy, because generally when the itinerant traffic comes into town, there's over $1 million that's spent in our community.
Thank you.
Councillor Niche.
Well, this year is one of the biggest increases that we're looking at doing over all the last 7 or 8 budgets. You know, it's been a long run of zeros, and you know, there was a couple 1.5% increases. There was actually a 2% decrease in there, and you know, we're making a lot of traction, and we're moving ahead on a lot of projects this year. RCMP station and our landfill, and obviously our dam, which you know, seems to be getting close for water concerns. We hopefully have our dam up and running by June, I believe it is. So you know, the fact that we've been able to go the last 7 or 8 budgets without really increasing taxes, you know, at least our portion of the taxes, which most people don't realize that, you know, about 35% of the tax bills are actually monies collected on behalf of other agencies. So there may be increases there, but we've managed to keep it low and keep it down. And this year, going through COVID and all these projects that we have going on, you know, I'll say good job to Ms. Bauman and staff for you know, basically getting us even only a 3.6% increase, because it's the amount of projects and the amount of things that we have going on right now. It's not seen by any other community, and there is no doubt that there's a lot of things that we could still do, and a lot of things that people want to see, but we just have to keep trucking forward and try and climb ourselves out of this hole that was created in the past and by the loss of industry, and we work our way out of it. And so, as much as I hate to see taxes go up, the fact that it's 3.6% this year, you know, I'm gonna have to agree with it.
Thank you, Councillor Niche. Councillor Moreau.
Yeah, so trying to avoid repeating anything Councillor Niche said while agreeing with him, I think beyond the significant number of ongoing projects that we're taking on as an organization, it always is a difficult balance to try to strike in a time of significant cost inflation as well. And I think we've seen that with just about every project, that by the time you get pricing from a contractor to the time that everything's actually arranged and ready to build, price escalation is significant, it's noticeable, and it's only continuing to get worse. So it is a very tough balance to strike. The other comment I would make, and I hope I can encourage us to continue offering the budget simulation portal. I found that just really interesting to read the results, where that simulation allows for a lot more nuanced feedback from members of the public than just do you agree or disagree with the budget. And a couple of really interesting things for me in this conversation around trying to strike a balance. I mean, obviously people want to pay less taxes, they want more roads paved, they want more recreation, they want more in capital reserves, and I mean, none of that's a surprise. But what was a surprise for me was that the average change to community grants was actually a decrease, and I thought for sure that that would be something that would show an increase, but the actual average was a small decrease. So in this conversation around trying to strike a balance, it was the same thing with fire and police was a decrease as well. If we want to try to protect public service, maintain a certain level of service that people have grown accustomed to, try to avoid raising taxes as much as possible, and still deal with all of these things, it's that balance that we have to strike. Something has to give somewhere. We're never going to make everyone happy, and in trying to make everyone happy, we will make pretty much everyone unhappy. So I think by prioritizing human health and safety and public services, I think staff have done a great job in their recommendation here this year.
Thank you, Councillor Moreau. Councillor Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's like a tough year, like COVID, and so we already increased 3% on our utility bill just a few months ago, 5% on recreation fees. So I think people are already struggling with COVID thing, right? And not many people have jobs. Higher home taxes, right, will give more burden on them. So all these years, our taxpayers, they supported Watson Land, and now last few years we developed Watson Land and start making money on that, and we have funds available in the Legacy Fund from there. So my recommendation is, like, if we can use that money to balance this budget, right, and don't put any extra burden on our taxpayers. And for next year, we should be looking for more industry in the Watson Land on 444 lot to get even more revenue from those places. And even we should give break to our taxpayers, because they are already paying so much taxes from last many years. So my recommendation, I'm not in favor of increasing any tax now. My recommendation is to balance from the Legacy Fund because all these years our taxpayers they supported the Watson Land and other places, but now it's time to give break to our property peoples. So my recommendation is to get money from Legacy Fund.
Can I say something, Chair?
Yes, jump in, Mayor Brain.
Yeah, I can understand where Councilor Renhow is coming from. The challenge is when you borrow from another fund to pay into operations, then essentially you're just delaying another a larger increase of taxes at another time. It's just borrowing now to pay off the inevitable later. So the reality is smaller, more consistent tax increases versus, a large increase at another time when you borrow in from another fund, I think is what the challenge with that strategy is. It kind of pays off for this today, but the relief doesn't really actually come, because 2 years from now or a year from now, then you're looking at a 5 or 6% tax increase to pay off the difference. So it's actually not really a strategy that's going to work because of just how the budget structure, how the operation fund works, how legacy fund works, and then all our utility funds. So, as much as I understand the desire for that, it won't actually translate to that. It just pushes it off to another council to make a harder decision. We're in a position this year where, inflation's gone up, prices have gone up across the board. We've done everything we can to, keep it as low as possible. I think the last 5 or 6 years, we've essentially had a 0% tax increase, even decreased taxes. So we've been doing everything we can to hold the line, of course. But every community is in this situation. Every community across Canada is facing a 2 to 3% tax increase every year just to keep up with cost of living. And that's not to do new things or to do anything special. That's just to do cost of living. So this tax increase actually gives us a reserve, which we had put $800,000 into last year, and the staff have made it a creative budget here this year to be able to do all the things we need to do, pay for things we need to pay for, but also continue to hold a reserve, because if we don't have a reserve, there'll be a time when this community is really going to need one, and we need to make sure we keep investing in that. So, it's a tough decision to make, but I do support it in the end.
Thank you, Mayor Brain. Councilor Rendoa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I understand, if we don't make decision, future council has to make a decision. And other community, other municipalities are increasing taxes too. But for us, we have a Watson Land, and we only develop a little bit yet. We still have lots of options there to develop, create more revenue for the future. But other communities, they don't have that kind of option. So that's why I think we can use this time money, because it's COVID time, everybody's struggling, and use that money for now and for next year. Try to develop that Watson Land, get more revenue from there. And even we should give break to our property owners.
Thank you, Councilor Rendoa. Councilor Cunningham.
I agree with what Mayor Brain has said, that you can't keep taking money out of legacy, because sooner or later legacy is going to be empty, and then you're going to have a big increase. We in the last 3 years, we actually put the mill rate down. The mill rate's down even more this year, but because assessments have gone up, taxes are going to go up in some cases. But I think at the end of the day, we can't just pass this off to future generations. We got to tackle the problem now. I think the city staff's done a great job, and when you sit down like we did with the RBA meeting on the weekend and listen to the woes of other towns and that, we're actually in pretty good shape. It's been well taken care of over the years. When we first got on council, the user fees hadn't been put up for 10, 12 years. Everything was starting to fall around our ears. The infrastructure's still not up to where it should be, but the staff has done a great job of getting the dam, the water supply, and that. We're now working on a water treatment plant. These all cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. And if we don't have money in the bank to match federal grants, then we can't get those federal grants. And that's a problem down the line right now with some of these small communities. They can't even apply for these grants because they got to have 25%. If they need $100,000, they got to have $25,000. We need hundreds of millions of dollars. So we need millions of dollars in the bank to be able to get $75 million. And if we keep drawing off that legacy fund, we're not going to have that money. And then we're going to be in a big problem. And so I think the staff's done a great job of what they've done so far. And, you know, and I believe even now our mill rate is slowly coming down. At one time it was in the top 10 of the province, probably top 5, and it's down lower now than it's ever been. And I think we can't keep passing this off onto future generations. We got to tackle the problem now.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Niche.
Mr. Chair, could I just get on the speaking list?
Yes, we will add you there, Councillor Eddy.
Yeah.
When you go and you look at the legacy fund and what it's done for our community, you know, if you used it just to you know, keep taxes you know at the line all the time, then we wouldn't have that money there for its intended use, and that's to basically develop our community and use it to further us. You know, if you just used it to cut down taxes all the time, you know, that's where we've put our money in for the dam. That's where we've put our money in for all these big projects that we need to do. And if we just used it as a fund to keep taxes low, then these projects wouldn't happen, or we wouldn't have our contribution to put to these projects. And you know, even though Watson Island has come a long way in the last 7 years, it went from being a major liability to, yes, it is making us money now, but that money is you know, for us to gain more money, we're having to invest that money into Watson Island, and we're having to put more money into it to make it a better future. You know, you go back into let's go back into the 80s or the 70s when times were good around this town, and money was given away freely, and no thought of the future was ever really thought of. No money was put away for the problems that we are now dealing with. It was easy just to hand out money because there was lots coming in, and there was easy to build a new civic center, and easy to build a new performing arts center, and easy to build all these beautiful assets that we now own, but we now have to look after. You know, and that costs us a lot of money. I mean, between our civic center and our swimming pool and the performing arts center, I mean, they're liabilities for us, and they're money that you know, back in the 80s, I wish that they had a thought of asset management and how to put some money away for the pipes in our roads, but it was easier to build fun things. Instead, here we are now, we're not building fun things, we're building, you know, $30 million dams and stuff that just so we can have clean drinking water, and $30 million water treatment plants, and they're not fun projects. They're necessities, and you know, legacy has allowed us to contribute to these projects and to give that money to just keep our taxes low 1 year. That could be the difference between making you know, the next project, whether it's our water treatment plant or whatever it may be. We've got an RCMP building to build. You know, I'm sure there's numerous other projects that we will have to do. We had someone talking about retaining walls and sidewalks tonight. So, you know, really we need $600 million. So at the end of the day, you know, we've done the best we can to hold the line, but at some point we do have to raise taxes a little bit. And if you look at any other community, I will challenge anybody to try and find another community in this province that has held the line like we have for the last 7 years. It's almost unheard of. That being said, our taxes were traditionally higher than everywhere else, and that's why, you know, we chose to take this route. You know, I get what Councillor Rendall was saying about everybody's costs going up, but, you know, probably a good contribution. I'm sure Ms. Bauman could tell us the exact number, but you know, just the increase in RCMP alone due to a contract signed by them this year is going to increase ours, along with every other municipality in this country that has RCMP, by a huge amount. And would you happen to have that number on what it's costing us extra this year in back pay and in future numbers for RCMP?
Go ahead, Ms. Bauman.
I'm sorry, I don't have the back amount, but the increase to the current year's contract is was made up one of the justifications for the increase, and I'm just looking for it right now. That's an extra $380,000 this year.
Could you tell us what that would work out to in a percentage-wise for our taxes?
It's about a 2% tax increase.
Thank you, Ms. Bauman. Sorry, Councillor Adie?
Yeah, I'm following the conversation from a distance. I wanted to make 2 or 3 points about this. One, with respect to the public feedback mechanism, I agree with Councillor Moreau that it is always interesting to allow the public to participate in a way that's kind of a practical reference in what's involved in the budget. And I took from that there were a couple of items where there was kind of a distinct leaning in a particular direction. And Councillor Moreau referred to the RCMP and the fire services. But I don't know that there's anything that could be done with respect to those things in the space of a month-long decision about a budget. These are much longer and more complex matters, and if there is a public will for a conversation about those things, then I think that over the long term they could be pursued. But the feedback itself is valued, and I do think we need to continue seeking that feedback in whatever forums we can. The second point I wanted to make was I agree with Mayor Brain with respect to the need to kind of face the reality that we need to change the tax level, and to do it in a way that allows us to make gradual changes rather than face drastic changes later. I think that, you know, if you look at even a family budget, when you know that things are piling up, the best strategy is to take things on in small pieces and not leave it until you've got a bill that you can't pay. And my last point is more of a question for Corinne Bauman. What would be the effect of a significant increase in interest rates by the banks in terms of the debt portion of what we face in our budgets?
Well, an increase in interest rate for any of our borrowing will have a big effect, but any of the loans that we already have taken out have already been locked in, so there's no effect presently.
Thanks. So my point then is it becomes another argument for not dipping too far into reserves, because I think the economy is undergoing a bit of transition, and I think interest rates are one of those pieces that are likely to change, and we need to maintain some sort of a buffer in order to deal with the effect that might have going forward in the next few years. So in general terms, I guess I'm saying that I'm in favor of moving forward with the budget as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor Adie. Any further discussion from members of council? Okay, I'd just like to add my 2 cents onto this. Again, I really want to commend the staff for their work, especially our CFO, Corinne Bauman, for being able to balance this. There's a lot of moving parts that comes to a municipality in general, but with Prince Rupert, between municipal enterprise corporations like City West and then Watson Island, Prince Rupert Legacy Inc., there's a lot of moving parts that come with that. For us to have the tax increase as presented versus ones that are quite significant in other municipalities that don't have these options, and sourcing a dividend just this past year from City West, I think for us to allow to continue to make these investments and to move forward so that we're not having a large bill that we cannot manage. I think it's for us, for us to be fiscally responsible not only for the now but also for future generations. So for us to continue to moving in that direction, and just again to commend the staff. And I think for those of folks at home that don't fully maybe comprehend Prince Rupert Legacy Inc. and some of those structures and what we've been able to accomplish. I mean, for us, like we look at the things that we see day to day between potholes and other things that are lacking. But for us, when we've been to UBCM conventions and events, our staff are not only attendees, they are speakers at the events and teaching other municipalities and local governments on how to bounce back from not only recession, but also a local economic collapse and industry collapse that nearly led to a municipality's bankruptcy. For us to take it from there and then to go forward between such an awesome team in the previous council, our senior staff, and again, I just want to commend all of our staff members, especially our CFO, for the budget presentation this year. And Madam Corporate Administrator, I believe we have a motion on the floor with a mover and a seconder. Perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Oh, sorry, I meant in favor.
6-1 split. Yeah, the motion's carried. On to bylaws, we've got road closure bylaw number 3488, 2022. Recommendation that council give third reading of road closure bylaw number 3488, 2022 and proceeds to Modi for approval. Moved by Councillor Niche. Second by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, you missed...
the discussion period.
No, you missed the addition to the agenda of the Moose Hide Campaign Day. Number 4, newly...
4F at the very after the adjournment. Okay, gotcha. Okay, it's at the bottom there. So I'd like to entertain the motion F. I'll call on our corporate administrator to speak to that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So the Moose Hide campaign began as an Indigenous-led, British Columbia-born reconciliation movement that calls upon all Canadians to stand together to end violence against women and children. It has since grown into a nationwide movement of Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians from communities, First Nations, governments, schools, colleges and universities, police forces, and many other organizations across Canada, all committed to taking action to end this violence. Council is hereby requested to declare May 12th, 2022, Moose Hide Campaign Day. We'll also be providing more information about this campaign on the city's social media page, as well as Moose Hide pins have been ordered for all of council and staff.
Thank you, Madam Corporate Administrator. I'm going to move by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Moreau. Any discussion from council?
I think it's a very important point, and we should definitely publicize it. It's something that's got to be addressed. It's not just reconciliation. It's something that, especially through the pandemic and that, there's been a rise in a lot of domestic violence and that. That's something that we should really be taking a careful look at.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Yeah, and I fully support this motion as well. And just for me, just coming from the roots that I do, but also just even from own experience and just seeing, coming from a law enforcement background as well, and just seeing the challenges that come with domestic violence. And I think that pieces of those focal points can really be put on the burden of change placed on the males and perpetrators and folks that are also suffering from their own challenges and things like that. And that's a root of the problem that is also a $7.6 billion problem federally across Canada on any given year. Obviously, especially it would be higher given the circumstances with COVID and folks struggling. I think that there's a strong piece here that allows for some advocacy to piece together some of those other challenges and failure of social infrastructure. So again, I just wanted to say my 2 cents on that. So we'll call this motion to question. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Aye.
On to 5A. Road closure bylaw number 3488, 2022. The recommendation that council give third reading of road closure bylaw 3488, 2022 and proceeds to Modi for approval.
Actually, Mr. Chair, you already passed that.
We passed this. Oh, we did. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next one. So we're on to item 5B, Business Regulations and Licensing Bylaw 3476, 2021. Recommendation that Council gives fourth and final reading of Bylaw number 3475, 2021. Moved by Councillor Moreau, seconded by Councillor Randella. Any discussion from Council? All those in favor? No. Oh, Barry Yoga, Councillor. No. Gotcha. Councillor Cunningham.
You're not getting off that bloody... Exemption, number 10. We've gone backwards on this. It was first, we were going to exempt single-family dwellings unit. Now we've gone, does not apply to single-family dwelling units, two-family dwelling units, or secondary suites, if any of these units. You can have a duplex, and the way this reads, they could have 3 or 4 suites in the duplex to make it a 5-plex, and it's still exempt. I think there's this, it's almost, you know, it's almost deceptive wording here, simply because people living in these suites are the most vulnerable people, and, you know, yes, they're going to be covered by a complaint-driven system, but I'd rather see a number on this of a duplex, or, you know, two-family dwelling or 3 units, something like that. You're leaving this wide open, and the most vulnerable people are the people who are going to be affected the most. You're not going to complain about subpar housing right now in this town, because if you complain and your landlord says, I'm going to renovate and kick you out, you're not protected, and then on top of it you've got no place to find. And this is the vulnerable people, the lower income people, things like that. So I'd rather see a specific number on that exemption rather than just leave it wide open. And I think anyone that, you know, we were trying to protect mom and pop operations, like people that have a house and have a basement suite they rent out, because of the provincial bylaw that if they renovate they got to find another place for them. But if you've got a 3-plex or a 4-plex or a 5-plex, you've got room to put these people in while you're renovating one suite. And I just, this exemption now is just going farther and farther down the street.
Councillor Niche.
I may be incorrect in this, and the staff could correct me if I'm wrong, but the way it's written is that it's basically a single family, or I mean a single unit. So if you had a duplex, and further tonight you'll see on our next conversation is part of that is the change of making duplexes to allow a suite in each. So you could essentially have a duplex with one small suite in each unit. So I don't believe you can do it with 5 units, and I don't think you can do it more. So I believe the number is already set at 4, because it would be a single or a duplex with a suite in each. You can't have more than a suite in each of those units. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay, so the number's already set at 4. So
the number's not set there. It's just so it leaves it wide open.
You need to press your microphone again.
Less than a month ago, we had a rezoning application before us to take a duplex to a 4-plex. It already had 5 suites in it, and we tabled that, and it hasn't come back to us. Now that's one example, and there's other examples in this town of so-called duplexes with more than 2 basement suites in them. And these are the people this bylaw is supposed to be protecting. And I'd rather see a number, because if you've got a 4-plex, and our concern was if you start renovating, you have to take the tenant out and find a place for them to live while you're renovating. That was one of our concerns in the beginning. That's why the single-family dwelling exemption was there. But now, if you have a 4-plex and you're going to renovate one suite, you've got a place to put those other people. And so what I'm looking at is protection of people. And this doesn't protect them. It's, there's no number there. It says two-family dwelling units or secondary suites, if any of those units. So they're, you know, yeah, but is it?
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Over to Mr. City Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I would note that this has become, this has changed to include duplexes per council's decision last week. So the exemption is an exemption from being a part of a licensing program. So Section 10 excludes single-family dwellings with suites or duplexes with suites if council approves that to be exempt from the licensing part. The part 4 of the bylaw pertains to property management. Those aren't exempted at all. So this is only from the licensing part. The practical application of this bylaw, once council and if council adopts the omnibus bylaw that's on the agenda, would be a 4 units. That would be the practical application of this, because it would exclude two duplexes with suites from the licensing requirement. Anything above that, a triplex or any other multifamily above that, would be under this licensing requirement. So this is quite specific. It says single-family dwellings or two-family dwellings, and basically any ancillary units that are within them. So for the licensing part, that's what's exempted from licensing. So I hope that explains that in terms of what the effect of number 10 is.
Yeah, it just seems to leave it open to be like, you know, the biggest problem we have, and that was the biggest problem we had, and Paula Grace from Unemployment Action Society, who's the housing advocate here, came in and explained the biggest red eviction problem he has in this town is single-family dwellings with a suite or duplexes with suites. And to me, you don't have problems in apartments. You know, very seldom. We had one, and he was notorious in the province. But you go around to all the other apartments in town, and they're, you know, it's a big investment. It's millions of dollars. I know. I was involved in one that we sold, and you know, you look after those investments. You look after your tenants. But when you have a small house, and you're just there to make some money, you know, people aren't keeping the standard up. And yes, it's going to be complaint driven, but people are going to be reluctant to complain, and that's my concern. You know, we've been through this before. This is probably the 4th runaround I've had on this one, but I'm concerned about the vulnerable people, the lower income people, the people that have 2 families living in 1 suite and things like this. They can't afford to complain because they've got no place to go. We've got almost 0 occupancy in this town, and the lower income people don't have a choice. They've got to stay where they are. Anyway, I've beaten it up enough.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Nietzsche?
I mean, I think you're arguing about the wrong thing here, because we're arguing about licensing, and licensing is 4 units. It's not, as far as keeping up with the standard of living in a place, that's covered in the bylaw also, and it's covered by the province. So, you know, as much as you know, I understand what you're saying, that you know, it's going to be complaint driven. The argument you're having about whether it's 4 units, that's for licensing. That's just for having city staff having to write out a license for somebody that has, you know, so many rental units. Now, so basically, if they have a duplex, you know, if everyone that had a duplex in this town had to have a license, that's a lot of extra manpower for our staff to to look over that and to look after that whole system of having licenses for everybody that had a duplex in this town. So the licensing part is, you know, where this number of units comes into play. As far as the conditions of people's places and if they have a problem, well, that's covered under another portion of this, and that's covered also provincially too. So I think, as much as I agree with your passion of you know, let's use the word slumlords, I don't feel that what you're asking to change here is going to make a difference in the problem. The problem is, you know, calling out slumlords, I guess you could say it.
Sorry, Mr. City Manager, and then Councillor Cunningham.
I would just note for council's consideration that if council proceeds with adopting the bylaw as it's currently written, that does not preclude council from watching how it's administered and watching the implication of how it's administered and making changes if necessary to add more protections or to take away some of the regulations depending on how effective it is. So this is a step forward, I think, yes, in many ways. You know, and you know, if there is concern about how effective it is, council could also pass a resolution to say that please bring back a review after a year to see how well it's working, to see if there's any tweaks that need to occur. That's an option for council to consider.
Perfect. Can we make a friendly amendment as prescribed? Sorry, regarding a review after 12 months of administration. Does that work as well? That work for you, Councillor Cunningham?
That would work, but, you know, using the expression slum landlords, if they've got a fourplex and they can put another unit in there and they're not licensed to begin with, who's going to check on that fifth unit?
Mr. City Manager.
I understand that would be an issue, but it's not an issue that is directly impacted by this. If somebody puts in a fifth unit, that would be a violation of the zoning bylaw, and if we were to find out about it, you know, then we could act on it for bylaw enforcement. Just because somebody, even if this was duplexes and single-family dwellings were a part of the licensing scheme, somebody could still do that, and we'd still have to find out, and then we still have to act on our zoning bylaw. So that I think it's a separate issue that could be managed, you know, effectively separately.
So you have a duplex. You put 2 suites in it. Are you paying for utilities?
I think I could be corrected on this, but and I'll ask Mr. Pucci or our CFO to weigh in if I get this wrong. I think that we currently charge separately for separate utilities for secondary suites, and that would apply as well, I think, to if there is suites and duplexes as well.
Sorry, Mr. City Manager, was that a question for myself?
It was more of a statement with an invitation to correct him if he's wrong, without repercussion.
Yeah, so that houses with suites in them, yes, they pay separate utilities.
Spot on. So, Director Pucci, you get to keep your job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Cunningham? Nope. Okay. Councillor Moreau.
I'll keep my comments really brief because I felt like we're rehashing the debate from third reading, and I thought we reached a good compromise. So all I'd really want to add is I think perfection in this case, or searching for perfection, is the enemy of the good, and I think this is a good first step. And if we do need a friendly amendment for a review after 12 months, I don't know if I was a mover or a seconder, but I'm happy to.
I think you were quite possibly the mover.
What's that? Yeah. So
we just need a shaker or a seconder now.
Whoever seconded that, Gurvinder, if you're good with that as a friendly amendment, then yeah, let's add that provision to do a review at 12 months. And if there's any changes, any unforeseen consequences, anything we want to add or subtract, we can do so at that time.
Okay. Any other further discussion from council? To call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion's carried. So on to item 5C, report from planning regarding a zoning amendment bylaw number 3493/2022. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. It's a bit closer. So the bylaw number 3493/2022 is a general collection or omnibus of amendments to zoning bylaw number 3462/2021. These proposed amendments address topical issues that have emerged since the last zoning bylaw update. Undertaking the amendments will streamline regulatory interpretations and approvals and ensure that the zoning bylaw is a living document that is clear, cohesive, and effective. So the amendments are presented in 2 sections. Section 1 covers 12 items that include additions and alterations of definitions, permitted uses within existing zones, signage regulations, and other housekeeping items. As these are housekeeping items, I will not go into great detail on these in this presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Section 2 provides a report on accessory dwelling units. That includes a proposed permitting of lock-off suites in multifamily buildings and expanding secondary suites to be permitted in 2-family homes or duplexes. So quickly for Section 1, Council may consider the following 12 proposed items or amendments independently and proceed by accepting them, requiring alterations or rejecting them. These include adding a definition and permitting animal hospital or clinic in several zones, changing the definition for creative industry, adding a definition for altering the definition for gross floor area and adding a definition for building footprint, creating a marine district zone, changing signage in the city core, altering permitting signage in the city core, adding marina parking requirements, changing the home office definition, changing the off-street parking definition, changing the single-family dwellings definition, removing repetition in the commercial 2 zone, general commercial zone, and changing setback requirements in commercial service zones. And I'll just go into detail on the shipping containers amendment. So the proposal is to would permit shipping containers for up to 60 days for temporary storage uses in all zones on private property. The storage containers are currently subject to temporary use permit application process, which requires review before council and can take up to 1 month or several months. So for emergency uses such as flooding and for temporary storage, that would be completed within that time. We are suggesting allowing shipping units for up to 60 days. So the Section 2 is the housing, the proposed secondary suites and lock-off suites. The housing situation in Prince Rupert is well suited to densification through accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. This proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw includes the introduction of lock-off suites in multifamily housing and, as I said, the permitting of secondary suites in 2-family dwelling or duplexes. So the first thing would be to alter the definition for 2-family residential dwelling to permit 1 secondary suite per principal dwelling, adding a definition for lock-off suite, and then altering the section 3.4, which describes general provisions for secondary suites. These changes would include permitting secondary suites as an accessory use to a single or 2-family home, permitting lock-off suites as an accessory use to dwelling unit within multifamily housing buildings, limiting the size of secondary suites to 90 meters squared or 40% of inhabitable area, limiting the floor area of lock-off suites to 45 meters squared or 40% of the habitable area, requiring a single additional off-street parking space per accessory dwelling unit, requiring that accessory dwelling units must not be short-term rentals, so they must be longer than 30 days, and only permitting 1 accessory dwelling unit per principal dwelling. Council has been actively working on the housing challenge in Prince Rupert, and specifically these actions stem from a series of housing actions resulting from a council housing actions workshop in June 15th that council endorsed. This was part of the interim housing strategy. One of these actions included amending the zoning bylaw to allow secondary suites and duplexes and multifamily buildings limited to bachelor or 1-bedroom lock-off suites to a maximum of 500 square feet, which is approximately 45 meters squared. The accessory dwellings can provide rental income to homeowners and offer affordable ways for renters to live in residential neighborhoods. The option of rental income incentivizes new growth and home ownership as it can offset high building costs, which are characteristic of the North Coast, and they can also be a mortgage helper. ADUs often have 1 and 2 bedrooms, which adds housing for smaller households and single dwellers, and this can help loosen the rental market and specifically support their growing younger population, incoming workers from the port and other industries, and family members or caregivers to help residents age in place. These actions can help maintain families here and support anticipated growth without significant form and character change or introducing sprawl. So council may consider these proposed amendments. Firstly, they may consider accepting the proposed amendments for secondary suites and duplexes subject to multifamily development permit areas. They may accept the proposed amendments for adding secondary suites to duplexes not subject to the multifamily development permit areas. They may require changes to this proposed amendment, or they may reject it. And similarly with lock-off suites and multifamily businesses, they are automatically subject to multifamily development permit areas because they're within multifamily buildings, but you may require amendments or reject or accept. And I'll just end that to support the public process, we will put a Q&A for these proposed amendments. If you choose to proceed to public hearing, we'll put the Q&A on Rupert Talks ahead of time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Councillor Nietzsche?
So if I could put my 2 cents in for you're offering different solutions, I would think that not putting it into the development permit for the extra suites. I don't think that adding that extra level is going to help, because in a multifamily property, I can understand having that extra step of a development permit so that you make things look nice and fitting to the neighborhood, because typically a multifamily project is a bigger project. But to put that on to a duplex, and with a 500 square foot in the basement, suite in the basement, I think that that's just one more added step that will actually deter people from building. And what we're trying to do is encourage them from building. And I think what people need to understand in this, if we decide to go ahead with this and we decide to have duplexes allowed to have a suite in each, it's not a fourplex. It's a duplex with a small 500 square foot suite in each one. So you're not, if you want to build a fourplex and you want to have 4 big units, then you're applying for multifamily zoning. And I think that that's the big piece that people need to understand. And if you want to build it, no matter if it is a duplex or with a suite in each, or if it's a multifamily place, you still have to have the parking to support it. So I don't think that this is going to be like all of a sudden every single house in town is going to turn into a fourplex. And I think people need to understand that this is going to be limited as to where it's going to happen, because in order for it to happen, you most likely will be building new, because if you're trying to do this into an old application, an old house or an old building that's there, you're probably not going to have enough space to build the parking and to allow all these units to be in one place. So I don't see it overtaking our town in 4 units at a time. So I think it's a great plan. I think it's a good way to add housing to our community, which is, we all know, is needed. And I propose to make it so that we do not have to apply for a development permit on the duplexes.
Sure. Yeah, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, the recommendation on the staff report would be for this to proceed without adding duplexes to the development permit. So those were presented as options in the report. So the recommendation, as it's currently written, would align with your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I just the way I read it was that she was basically giving us options here if we wanted to include it or not. So I would, propose to keep it that way without it, and not add that extra level, which could, at the end of the day, increase the cost enough that somebody may not want to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Niche. I guess you drawed this short straw today. You ended up getting stuck with the really long one. I think rock, paper, scissors next time, and we'll put him in the hot seat next time. All right, Councillor Moreau.
Couple questions for you. One's just a piece of clarification. So, there's on page 13, there's a subsection 3.4.1 subsection F. There's only one accessory dwelling unit permitted for each principal dwelling. So I just want to make sure that I understand that that wording prohibits someone from having both a lock-off suite and a secondary suite within the same dwelling.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
That would also further be prohibited because secondary suites are only within 1 and 2 family housing, and lock-off suites are only in multifamily, which is defined as 3+ units, principal
Gotcha.
units.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then my only other point of clarification then, because Councillor Nish has already hit on my other question, was so if multifamily housing is regulated by units per hectare. Walk me through on just a high level, if we enact these policy changes as they're recommended, what's the impact on overall density by adding lock-off suites?
So our density regulations within the zoning bylaw apply to number of principal dwelling units. So as these are accessory dwelling units, they don't actually factor into density calculations, and therefore they wouldn't be considered within those within our zoning density in terms of zoning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So my understanding, actually maybe I'll go back a step. So I don't know how you guys spent your weekend, but I spent mine reading a report called Accessory Dwelling Units, Case Studies and Best Practices from BC Communities by BC Housing. And it was really enlightening for me. And the reason I asked that question is because a lot of other, I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. The BC Building Code, according to this report, doesn't permit modifying existing apartments to have lock-off suites. So this would only apply to new construction.
Yes, that's my understanding. Although,
Yeah.
and similarly, the BC Building Code only permits secondary suites and duplexes that are side by side rather
Yeah.
than top or up and down. But in terms of the building code, there is something called an alternative solution that people can bring to the building inspectors. And that just allows, as long as certain safety measures, life standard measures are met, they can have alternatives to what is actually in the building code.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So then for the purposes, if I'm a developer and I'm coming with a new construction, then I want to have lock-off suites added to apartments, those aren't going to be calculated in the density per hectare calculation. Okay. Okay. So just a couple of other findings I thought were interesting from this report, why I tend to agree with Councillor Nish. There's only a third of survey communities in BC currently permit accessory dwelling units in duplexes or townhomes. And there's only 3 communities, as far as this report could tell, that have allowed lock-off suites in multifamily housing. The first was Burnaby for the development at Simon Fraser. Second was Gibson's, and third was Cumberland. But what was super interesting was Prince Rupert we're in the top 10 in the entire province for the number of accessory dwelling units. We have 607, behind only White Rock, Whistler, and then a bunch of communities in the Greater Victoria area. So I thought that was interesting. Sun Peaks and Pemberton have the highest number of accessory dwelling units as a percentage of the residential stock, and the highest rate of growth of accessory dwelling units is in Fort St. John and Dawson Creek. A bunch of random facts that I'll get to in a second here. And half of the total growth in BC was in communities with 10 to 22,000 residents. So what all of those things taken together mean to me is that this is a tool that works really well in tourism-heavy communities and industry-based workforce communities, who are the ones who are building them and using them most. So you've done a really effective job at articulating the benefits as far as I see them. The main challenge I see beyond actually just legitimizing them in the zoning bylaw is what the permitting process looks like, and I might be putting the cart before the horse on this one. Maybe Mr. City Manager, could you speak a little bit to what you think the evaluation and permitting process might look like?
Yes. Are we talking about building permit or development permit?
Both.
Okay. Well, for duplexes, there would be no development permit. So for multifamily development permits only apply to the exterior of the building and to the grounds. So the legislation does not permit us to regulate internal configurations. So that would be irrelevant to the development permit. Then with respect to the building permit, it's basically compliance with the BC Building Code, or as Ms. Pope indicated, in those special instances where there's an alternative proposed and approved through the alternative compliance process.
Okay. This is almost a little bit beyond my pay grade. So maybe just in the interest of process, since Councillor Niche has already put this on the floor, do we want to deal with the housekeeping stuff before the accessory dwelling units? Is everyone good with that? Okay, so just as a matter of process then, so I can finish off my comments, maybe what I'd move first then is move to accept the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw presented, inclusive of items 1 to 12, which is the definitions and repetition.
Seconded by Councillor Niche.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, sorry, Councillor Cunningham didn't catch that.
Just moving the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw presented as items 1 to 12. That's all the changes to definitions, and removing repetition has nothing to do with the accessory dwelling units.
The only thing that I've got a concern with in all of this is building permits. Are we waiving building permits too? Considering that if we're going to
We're not waiving building permits.
No. No. Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Rendau? No. All right. I'd like to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
So to the second piece then, I think I'm going to capture what Councillor Niche got. So then I would also move to accept the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw to permit accessory dwelling units. You guys can correct me if I'm saying this wrong. To permit accessory dwelling units in 2-family or duplexes in the form of secondary suites, not subject to multifamily development permit areas. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, moved by Councillor Moreau, seconded by Councillor Rendau. Any further discussion from council? To call the question, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I presume that council is okay with us proceeding to public hearing?
That would be an accurate presumption, yes. Yeah, thank you, Mr. City Manager. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Any reports, questions, inquiries from members of council?
I have one.
Mayor Brain?
Just to make everyone aware that the Electoral Districts Commission will be in Prince Rupert on Wednesday at 10 a.m. to make if you want to make a presentation about any changes to the upcoming proposals for electoral boundary changes. They're proposing potentially up to 93 electoral districts, and I think it's important for them to hear that it's important to retain the amount of representation we have in the north and not to cut that down. So anyone who can submit online or show up in person, I think that would be absolutely helpful.
Thank you, Mayor Brain. Councillor Cunningham?
I had the pleasure of attending the Arts Council Awards ceremonies on Sunday, and I'd just like to point out that 3 of the people that got the awards were Rudy Kelly, Joan Mostad, and Trina Decker. All well-deserved. They've done a lot for theater, writing, and painting in this town, so it's nice to see them get recognized, and I think the community should hear about it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham.
I have one, if you don't mind.
Councillor Addy, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm not there tonight is I've been traveling through the province, and I don't know about anybody else in council chambers or anybody else in the community, but whenever I visit other towns, I find myself going, oh, they've got something like that. We don't have that. Or, well, we have something like that that's better than what they've got. So you do this comparative sort of checklist in your mind. So the reason I'm saying that is that one of the initiatives that we're planning to do is a review of parks and recreation, which is the kind of thing that people notice about different communities. So I guess I'm asking a general question on where we are in terms of moving forward towards a review of parks and recreation. And specifically, I would like to know if not only would it have a look at existing parks, existing facilities, but would it also invite public input in terms of facilities or activities that are not presently here. In other words, new initiatives, so that we could incorporate those into some sort of a long-term planning process. I guess that question might be for the city manager.
Go ahead, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Councillor Adie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Adie. Where we are in the process of reviewing our parks and recreation facilities, present and those that may occur in the future, is that we are out to a request for proposals for consultants to conduct or prepare a master parks and recreation plan. That will be closing within a few weeks, and it will certainly look at those services that we don't have that we might want to have through the public process.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I think we lost Councillor Adie. Okay. We cut off his discussion once again. Yeah. Okay. Any other inquiries from members of council? No, I just wanted to say a couple notes just regarding, so I attended the Seal Cove Saltmarsh opening this Sunday as well. So between Councillor Cunningham and myself, not being at two places at the same time. So thank you, Councillor Cunningham, for attending the arts session. And so it was a great turnout, and we want to thank our partners at the Port of Prince Rupert for helping make this happen. And again, just a thank you to all of those that came out and volunteered their time on a Sunday, on a very wet Sunday as well, and a little too wet for a three-piece, but that doesn't stop some of us. So it was a really great turnout. But again, I also want to just acknowledge, and unfortunately a couple of our members of the committee of the whole stepped out, but just to thank folks, members of the community coming in and voicing their concerns. You know, a lot of these things don't change until we bring attention and draw our voices to those. So I just again want to acknowledge those folks if they have a chance to watch this afterwards. Thank them for coming out, and thank you for the remaining resident as well. So, and on that note, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Meeting's adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.